Hey everybody, this is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. So maybe you're the proud new owner of a new Vespa GTS 300 HPE Racing 60s. Well, of course they come in two different flavors as I've reviewed in the past. You got the green and the white. Well, you need more storage, especially if you're going to tour your neighborhood or tour the country. It's always a nice thing to add a top case. Not only does it add extra volume of storage, but you also get the added comfort for your passenger and in many ways the added looks that you change by putting a top case and a rear rack on the scooter. So today I'm going to show you the Piaggio original rack. Part number from ScooterWest.com is GTS 29PA-BK. Since this scooter has the black trim package, we have the black specific rear rack for it. And Piaggio Vespa also has two specific top cases for the Racing 60s GTS. The thing with the GTS top cases, they always include a backrest pad. And there's so many different seat designs with the Vespa. We've had the Monte Bianco white top case for the GTS for several years, but now there's a specific top case that has a matching backrest pad that will match the same textures, patterns, and the trim as the seat found on your Racing 60s. And part numbers for those top cases is GTS 35N-BR, so BR is the two-digit color code for Piaggio Vespa, -60-HPE. And if you had the Verde Bosco green Racing 60s, kind of the British racing green, metallic green, be GTS 35N-VY, so VY is the two-digit color code, -60-HPE. Of course, there's a Piaggio part number for it as well, but at ScooterWest.com, we try to make it simpler for everybody and come up with a part number scheme that's easy for everybody that works here, for inventory, along with when you're looking to purchase the products. So let me share with you the three basic tools you need at minimum to install this top case. Recommend having a number 2 Phillips driver. That is included in the toolkit with your scooter. A T30 Torx driver. Again, you can find a T30 Torx driver in the toolkit of your scooter, but it's nice to have one that has a screwdriver style handle. I highly recommend having a set of large diagonal pliers. I know most home toolkits don't have something like this. You could probably get away with something that's 6 inches or larger in diagonal pliers. If you don't have this, you can improvise with a small saw, maybe a serrated knife blade can cut through the plastic that we need to cut through. And two optional tools that do make the job a little easier. If you're looking to put the top case on for good, there's a nylock locking nut that will need a 10mm wrench. And optional tool here that just aids for easy installation of the top case is a 10mm by 1mm pitch tap. And typically these are sold as a set. It would include a tap handle along with a set of metric taps. Again, these aren't 100% needed. You definitely need these three basic tools, but these are very helpful to have. So the first step is we got to open the seat and remove the standard factory grab rail that's on the scooter here. So start by removing the bucket. You want to take your Phillips screwdriver. It's a single screw that holds the plastic finish cap. Take your T30 Torx driver and take care not to slip and scratch the new paint finish. Remove the pair of screws. And you have a pair of screws at the frontmost mounting point of the grab rail. And you can go ahead and remove all the screws. The grab rail, you can't lift it, but it's kind of pinched in place by this plastic gas tank surround right here. And to remove the grab rail, just carefully lift it up. Lift up the gas tank surround and carefully slip the old grab rail out of place. So in order to mount a factory top case to a Vespa GTS Super or Racing 60, a Super Sport, you're going to need to buy the Piaggio Vespa Original Flat Rack. It comes in two different flavors. Of course, this going on to the Racing 60. The black's going to be the most appropriate one, but also comes in a chrome finish. The scooterwest.com part number on this is GTS 29 PA-BK. And it also includes the hardware to mount the top case to the rack itself. So to install this, pretty much has the same 4 mounting points as the original grab rail. So go ahead and lift the plastic right there, and then lift it on this side and carefully slip that underneath. And I'd start with a pair of screws right here, get them just started. You don't want to thread them all the way in. And included with the hardware kit for the top case is another pair of screws. You can use the same screws that were included with the original grab rail. They would work just as well. They're all the same size. They all have a flat washer and also the star washer. You want to make sure they're in the correct order. So carefully line the screws up. Make sure they start by hand. The last thing you want to do is cross thread these threaded bosses that are in your frame. And believe me, I've seen plenty of people do that. So you get these 2 started just by hand. So with the rear fasteners just barely tightened into the holes, you're never going to have perfect alignments. So oftentimes you just got to just move this so you have the plastic gas tanks around with this metal insert, the hole lining, and I see a perfect shot to the threaded frame boss, you know, the built-in nut in the frame. And again, just get that started and repeat with the right side. You can see it's just a little bit off. And it takes a little bit of muscle sometimes to get these into position. But again, make sure they all start. And at this point, it's threading in without issue. If you just try to cross thread these, you're going to make a big mess of the threads in your frame. It's not easy to repair. Go ahead and tighten them. And if you're just using a hand driver like this, pretty much as tight as you can go with a hand driver is appropriate for these fasteners here. So one downside to putting the flat rack on is you can't use this a little finisher cap that they've included with the standard grab rail. It is possible, if you're very careful, you could cut this and fit this around if you did want to spend a bunch of time making this fit. Obviously you need to glue it or do some other means of attaching it. It is possible, I have done it in the past, it just takes a ton of time to make this fit. And of course at that point you cover up these silver screws that look out of place and a little gap where the stickers kind of stop at the frame. The reason they don't use this is they add this extra strut bar right here because this flat rack can handle a lot more weight compared to the grab rail. I personally tested these down in Mexico. I would say you could go maybe about 25-30 pounds for a long distance trip. That's actually over the weight limit that they rate these at. But they're very strong, but you certainly don't want to be putting 50 or 100 pounds on this rack. And with the top case, you're going to get a pair of keys, just shaped like the original Vespa keys. They are different. It's pretty difficult to rekey these. They have changed the design of the keys. Sometimes it is possible. You could check our website, scooterwest.com, for mail order services. And if your ignition key goes into your top case key, then you have the right style tumbler to rekey so we can match your top case key or your ignition key to the top case. We have all the wafers and pins to do that here at Vespa Motorsport if that's something you want to do. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, you're just going to have 2 separate keys, one for your ignition, one for your top case. So included with the top case is the pad that matches the seat on the Racing 60's. And the way this attaches is with 3 or 4 screws from the inside the top case, and it's got 2 alignment pegs that help you align the pad as you put the self-tapping screws through the pad. So it takes 4 self-tapping screws that attach the backrest pad to the top case. And before installing the top case, I recommend with these bosses right here, you could start the screw, and you need to put a substantial amount of pressure in there to get the screw to actually pretty much puncture a hole through this black plastic backing of the soft top case pad. So pretty much once you puncture that, you can thread it a couple turns and it makes a nice little hole. That's a good starter. Otherwise, you're gonna be struggling to try to get the screws started, or you may not get all the screws into the plastic itself. So go ahead and align the top case pad. You can kind of feel right when it aligns with those pegs. And you can see I'm working on top of this plastic bag that's included with the pad. Go ahead and install the 4 screws. Start with the top pair. And take care not to over tighten it. You just want to stop right when you feel resistance where the screw bottom's out, because it's very easy to damage the plastic, strip it out pretty much if you over torque these screws. So these bottommost points are a little more difficult. You need to put some pressure on the pad in order to get the screws to start. So before you install this top case was intended for 2 different style rack systems on the Vespa GTS. The flat rack uses these 2 slide points and this hook right here, along with the center mounting point. If you have the folding rack that's found on the GTV and the standard GTS or any of the touring models, they would use these 4 mounting points. Unfortunately, these mounting points get in the way of the flat rack, so you need to remove them. And I found the easiest way to remove these posts right here is just to get medieval with it and get some diagonal pliers. So this is easiest accomplished with a large set of diagonal pliers. If you don't have something like this, you could use a little circuit, a circular cutter, a little hand saw. There's many ways you can just pretty much just lop those off is what you need to do. But the large diagonal pliers, that tends to be the easiest way to do it. So get right in there, make the cut on the first reinforcing post. Do it on the 3 remaining posts, or ribs, or whatever you want to call these. And you don't need to cut these flush. Pretty much the slot, as long as it's below the slot here, you're gonna do okay. And then just make some cuts in this boss here, just to weaken this part up. And at that point, you can just go in there and nip it away. And don't worry about it looking ugly. You'll never see it under here. But that's fairly clean. And just repeat with the other one right there. So go ahead and hold the top case while it's open. And this pair of cleats kind of engages with those 2 pieces of metal right there. And it's best if you just look underneath, kind of get everything to line up. The whole idea of this flat rack is it's only 1 screw to remove the top case if you ever wanted to. And this top case is secure because that screw is located inside your locked top case. At that point, you just slide this back and forth until it slides into place. And as what I'm doing is I'm using this single hole right here and looking for that threaded insert that's in the rack that I want to line up to. And the first time you install this, sometimes it'll take quite a bit of force to get it far enough forward to line up. And once you're close, say you're just a little bit off, you can take your number 2 screwdriver and just stick it in there and kind of use it to pull the hole, open it up just a little bit so you get a straight shot to that threaded fastener in there. So in your flat rack hardware kit, you're gonna have this wing nut that just you could just use your fingers to tighten it, and a step washer. So that little step faces down into that little cavity right there. And make sure you're going straight into the rack. Again, this is very easy to cross thread and make a mess of it. So if you are having difficulty getting that screw in, you can always take a 6mm by 1mm thread pitch tap. Typically taps are sold in a whole set, you know, a metric tap set. There's a tap handle, and pretty much it's got a flutes on it, so it's able to recut the threads. If there's any powder coat material or any burrs on the threads, I can just feel a small amount of resistance. It's not like I'm making new threads in this, but it's not uncommon that you may need to do this with these flat wrecks, especially the black one. It tends to have a little bit thicker coating on it, and at this point I feel the tap coming out of the bottom of the rack. So many times you'll just be able to send the screw right through without any issues. If you are having issues, I would suggest having a tap on hand. So pretty much all you want to do is tighten this about finger tight. And that's all you need to do. If you over tighten this, you can damage the bottom plastic part. Then you can fold that wing nut down. And a last but optional step included in the hardware kit is this nylock locking nut, 6mm nut. If you do not want to remove the top case, I would suggest putting this nut underneath on the remaining threads that are showing on the bottom of your rack. Take a 10mm wrench while you're holding the wing nut, and all you gotta do is just give it a little snug there. So I have a couple tips in order to prolong the life of your top case. You have to realize this whole top case is made of plastic. Everybody knows plastics of certain types, sometimes they can be brittle. If you overextend this lid, this hinge is very fragile. They do have these struts, and over time, if you force them too much, you may break these little tension straps, or you know, this pretty limit straps I would call them. And you could certainly make them out of metal cable, but I'll tell you, the plastic ones work good because they stay out of the way. So just keep in mind, don't ever throw the lid open with force. Just bring it up very carefully. And also, it's a good idea not to mess with the seat, open or close the seat, because you can make contact with the top case lid. So make sure it's always latched before you take off. Last thing you want to do is go down the road and lose the contents in your top case after you hit a large bump. So I consider this job to be easy for any home mechanic, just basic tools needed. And of course, hopefully my video gives you some tips on a successful install without messing things up. Pretty easy to mess up things sometimes when you just make one wrong step. And here in the workshop, I learned from all my techs, and I've just learned from experience myself messing with Vespas for all these years. Definitely a perfect accessory if you're touring across town or across country. You can put your jacket, your full-size helmet in there. It's very nice to have extra storage. I find that's the most convenient thing about scooters, is the extra storage. Over riding a motorcycle or some of my smaller scooters or vintage scooters that have very little storage. Oftentimes I want to stop somewhere, or I'm commuting to work. I need to bring more than just myself along for the ride. Thanks again for watching. This is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. Give this video a thumbs up if it helped you out in deciding to buy a top case or install one. Again, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, Vespa Motorsport, for all the latest and greatest in modern and vintage Vespas. Thanks again.